Amen. Say man. Amen. I'm Kiki Sohood, your host of the Mind Power Podcast. Look, I typically talk about like the conspiracy and shit, but now I felt like shit. I'm gonna go ahead and dive into a little bit of that true crime shit. I mean, who don't want to hear about this shit? Like the people on this very earth, like what they capable of. You know what I'm saying? Like I just can't seem to pass it up. Like I'm curious. It's like I just want to see who I'm surrounded with in this sick ass world. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've heard about so many serial killers, murderers, and pedophiles, but me personally, I feel like it ain't none that can top this one, man. I don't think nobody topping Jeffrey Dahmer. So, look, it took me a while to actually hear about him. I think I was like maybe 25, 26, probably. And it's like, as soon as I heard about him, like, I was definitely interested because I've never heard about it. I feel like it's rarely talked about because, for one, it's disgusting to hear. Like, I mean, and even it's even worse to picture it. But I feel like it's important, for people to know about this type of stuff because you really never know what people are capable of. So I'll go ahead and say this is very explicit. It's a disturbing story. So if you don't want to hear about cannibalism, murder, rape, then just turn the podcast off now, man. You gotta turn it off now. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into his childhood. So he was born May 21st of 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the first of two sons of Joyce Annette. His mom, Joyce, was a teletype machine instructor, and his father was a chemistry student. His name was Lionel Herbert, but from the chemistry student, he later started like being a research chemist. So with that being said, like Jeffrey deprived attention, as an infant and as well as a toddler by both parents. And, as once Dahmer, entered the first grade, his father university studies kept him from home most of the time. But even when he was at home, his wife, a hypochondriac, my bad, who had depression, which is a hypochondria is a condition where a person is like constantly worried about being sick, like their health, like it's like top tier of the main thing they worried about. But anyway, she constantly demanded attention, you know what I'm saying? And then she spent an increasing amount in bed, and on one occasion she would try to commit suicide with Equinel. It's like a minor tranquilizer. So with that being said, they say Dahmer was an energetic baby. He was a happy baby, but became notably subdued after a double hernia surgery shortly after his 4th birthday. So come elementary, he was regarded as quiet and timid, from one of his teachers stating that, she detected early signs of abandonment and Dahmer due to his mom's illness, and now the symptoms just boosted up with she pregnant. You know what I'm saying, with her second child. So them feelings, definitely increase. And me, I'm like, if you already dealing with so much shit, like, why do you have another baby? Like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like it's selfish. Like, how you take away from your only child and you can't even really, tend to him? But no judgment, just my opinion, but so after, finding out she was pregnant, they decided to move to Doylestown, Ohio in 1966, and that's when she gave birth to Dahmer's new baby brother, and his name was David. So from an early age, Dahmer definitely showed his interest in dead animals. Around the age 4 is when he began watching his father removing animal bones from beneath the family home. And Lionel, being his dad, said that Dahmer was oddly thrilled by the sound of the bones made, which he initially called fiddlesticks. So fast forward 8 years later in 1968, the family moved to Bath Township, Summit County, Ohio. And this was the third spot in 2 years and the parents' 6th address since they done got married. This house is where Dahmer began collecting like large insects, such like dragonflies, moths, skeletons of small animals like chipmunks and squirrels, and some of the remains like he stored them in jars, and like they was in jars of formic acid, and he stored them like within the hut, within their house. 2 years later is when Dahmer decided to ask what would happen if chicken bones placed in bleach. And I don't understand how, but the father was pleased by what he believed to, be his son like scientific curiosity. And he went out and demonstrated how to safely bleach and preserve animal bones. Now, if any of my nieces, nephews, cousins, aunties, uncles ask me this, that's a red flag. I don't care about how you bleaching them bones to save them. Ain't none of that. You can keep it. Shit. So in 1975, Dahmer, he decapitated a carcass of a dog before nailing the body to a tree and impaling the skull upon a stick in the woodland behind his house as a prank. He later invited a friend to view the display, claiming he had discovered the remains by chance. Like within that same year, Dahmer's dad taught him how to preserve animal bones, which again, I don't know why. I don't understand. Joyce began increasing her daily consumption of Equinol laxatives and sleeping pills for minimizing her tangible contact with her husband and kids. So you over here going to sleep, no disrespect, but like how you gonna go to sleep and your son is like oddly interested in learning how to I don't understand. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into his high school. So he was a freshman at Revere High School. He was seen as an outcast, but by the age of 14, he began drinking beer and hard liquor in daylight hours, frequently concealing his liquor inside the jacket he wore to school. He was known to have mentioned to one of his classmates who, like asked him like why he drinking scotch in the morning history class. Um, but Dahmer was basically saying it like shit, it's my medicine. But boom, when he hit puberty, he then learned he was gay. He didn't tell his parents though. But as a teenager, he had a brief relationship with another boy, but they didn't have sex. Later on, Dahmer began fantasizing about dominating and controlling a completely submissive male partner in his early to mid teens. And his fantasy gradually evolved to his focus upon the chest and the torsos of his fantasies. Somehow his fantasies became intertwined with dissection. And I'm like, shit, how do you even mix chest, torso with dissected? Man, they fucking, I don't understand. So at the age of 16, Dahmer got his fantasy of rendering an unconscious male jogger he found attractive and then making sexual use of his body. So one day, Dahmer concealed himself in some bushes with a baseball cap, waiting on this man to jog. But luckily, that day, he didn't run. And I mean, I guess it's safe to say, like, that would have been that would have been his first victim. But in school, despite him being a loner, he was like a clown among his friends, the class clown. He staged pranks, which became known as doing a Dahmer. But the fucked up part about it is the pranks included acting as if he having a epileptic seizure or cerebral palsy. And he'll do this at like schools and local stores and shit. Like that shit wow. Like didn't nobody think that shit was weird? Like I'm not finna. Nah, that ain't me. And then by 1977, Dahmer grades like they dropped, and then within that same year, his parents attempted to save their marriage. But then Joyce ass decided to go out and cheat in 1977, so they decided to have a divorce. And Lionel, that's Dahmer's dad, he moved out the house like early 1978. Boom, let's get into the late teens and the early 20s, and that's where the murders began. So 3 weeks after graduating, Dahmer committed his first murder. He saw Stephen Mark Hicks, who was hitchhiking his way to a concert. It was somewhere in Lake Park, Ohio. He was 18, almost 19, and Dahmer asked him to come to his house, have a few beers, since he had the house to himself. So Dahmer was saying, just seeing the sight of his bare chest standing on the side of the road started his sexual feelings. But when he started talking about girls, he knew any sexual passes was gonna get denied. So the hours passed, them talking and drinking, listening to music. Hicks was ready to go, and Dahmer didn't want, he didn't want him to leave, so he bludgeoned him with a 10-pound dumbbell. Then he struck him twice from behind while Hicks tried to sit up in a chair. So then Hicks went unconscious, and that's when Dahmer strangled him to death. He strangled him with the bar strip he had. Then boom, he stripped the man's clothes off, rubbing his chest, then masturbated as he stood over his dead fucking body. Like, tell me how they turn you on. Make me understand. Then the next day, Dahmer, nasty ass, dissected his body in the basement, buried his remains in a shallow grave in the backyard. Before several weeks later, he dug his body up, paring it, basically cutting it with a chef knife, from the bones, dissolving his flesh in acid before flushing the solution down the toilet. And that ain't even it, fam. He crushed this man's bones with a sledgehammer until it was like splinters, like chopped, like, and then he scattered them in the woodlands behind the family home. Like, what type of... All right, now let's go ahead and ride until his college and army stage in life. So 6 weeks after the murder, Dahmer's father and his fiance returned home, and they discovered that Dahmer was living alone. So then they made Dahmer enroll into Ohio State University, hoping to major in business, but he failed in majority of his classes due to his drinking. The only class he passed, of course, was riflery. So come January 1979, his father urged him to enlist into the Army, where he trained as a medical specialist at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas. Fast forward to March 24, 1981, Dahmer was deemed unsuitable for military service because of his alcohol abuse, and was later discharged from the Army. He received it on honorable discharge, as the superiors didn't believe that any problems Dahmer had in the Army would be applicable to civilian life. So after being discharged from the Army, he opted to travel to Miami, Florida, because he was tired of the cold, supposedly, and he couldn't face his dad. So he tried to live on his own. In Florida, he found employment and rented a room in a motel, which he spent most of his money on alcohol, and was soon evicted for non-payment. So he spent his evenings on the beach as he continued to work at a sandwich shop until calling his pops and asking him to return back home in September of that same year. So, he already showing like unstable type of shit, you know what I'm saying? From the Army, it's like passes early, you know? So let's go ahead and talk about him moving back home and relocating to Wisconsin. So after him being home, Dahmer's father and stepmother started giving him like a lot of chores to keep him occupied while he looked for a job. He still was a heavy drinker, and 2 weeks after he returned, he was arrested for drunken disorderly conduct. And he was only fined $60 and a 10-day jail sentence. So his father tried to wean him off alcohol, but being unsuccessful, come December 1981, they sent him to live with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin, hoping that would change, the center of his attention, and her influence would persuade him to quit drinking and find a job and live responsibly. And I'm like, that ain't worth shit. Cause why you send your son out there with your mama knowing that she probably couldn't do more than what you could? Like that. I tell you. So then he ended up finding a job at a blood plasma center, and 10 months later he was let off and arrested for decent exposure on August 7, 1982 at Wisconsin State Fair. He was exposing himself on the south side of the Coliseum, and it was 25 people present, including women and children. He was convicted and fined $50 plus court costs. So then after that, he ended up finding a job as a bartender. In late 1985, he began going to bathhouses, which he described as a relaxing place, but when having sexual encounters became frustrating at his partners moving, so he got mad at them moving. Like, fucking weirdo. Anyways, he started giving them sleep pills or laced their liquor with sedatives. He then waited on them to go to sleep before having sex with him. After 12 incidents at the bathhouse, they revoked Dahmer's membership. So he went to the hotel rooms to continue doing what he was doing. Bullshit. Shortly after losing that job, he saw that an 18-year-old male had a funeral coming up. So he decided to try to steal the fresh corpse and take it home, but after seeing that the soil was too hard, he abandoned the plan. Like, on September 8, 1986, Dahmer was arrested for lewd behavior for masturbating in the presence of two 12-year-old boys, claiming he was only peeing, but he didn't even know that he had witnesses around. Like, boy. So on March 10th, he was sentenced to 1 year probation with an additional instructions he was to undergo counseling. So the fact that y'all see that he doing it over and over, and if it ain't the same thing, it's close enough. And y'all steady want to give this man probation, petty fines, another chance. Like, y'all didn't see the pattern, bruh. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and dive in the late 20s and the early 30s. And of course, this is where more murders happen. So at the Ambassador Hotel on November 20th, 1987, Dahmer encountered a 25-year-old man named Steven. Dahmer, of course, persuaded him to return to the hotel where he was going for an evening, and according to him, he had no intentions of murdering him, but when he just wanted to drug him and lay beside him and explore his body. Like, why? What's up with the drugging folks, man? It's crazy. But he just wanted to, lay beside him. But then the next day, he wake up and find Stephen laying under the bed. His chest was crushed. He was black and blue with bruises and blood seeping out from the corners of his mouth. Yet, Dahmer's fist and forearm extensively bruised. And Dahmer told investigators he cannot believe this has happened, and he had no memory of it. You fucking lying, boy. Okay, so to get rid of his body, he went out and purchased a large suitcase, took it to his grandma's house. 1 week later, he cut his head off, his arms and legs from the torso, removing the bones. He removed the bones from the body before cutting the flesh into small pieces small enough to handle, putting the flesh in 2 plastic bags, wrapping the bones inside a sheet, and pounding them with the sledgehammer until those, of course, were splinter-like. He said the whole process took him maybe 2 hours to complete, and disposed of Stephen remains, excluding the severe head in the trash can. After having the head wrapped in a blanket for 2 weeks, he then boiled the head in a mixture of Alexol and bleach in an effort to retain the skull, which he used for masturbation. This man was disgusting. He eventually had to throw the skull out because it was too brittle by the bleaching process. So he had to get rid of it. Like, you nasty little man. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and chop it up about the intermediate incidents. So after that murder, he started like seeking victims. Hey, photo. My dog in the background going crazy with her toys. So if you hear any squeaking, it's her going hard with this damn squeaky toy. All right. So as I was saying, after that murder, he began like looking for more people at the gay bars. He would lure them to his grandma's house, drug them, of course, before or even shortly after engaging sexual activity. And once they was unconscious, he'll kill them by strangling them. 2 months after his last murder, he ended up meeting a 14-year-old prostitute named James. He offered him $50 to pose for nude pictures, of course, and then after having sex with him, he strangled him on the floor and left his body there for 1 week before dismembering him the same way he did Stephen. And then, boom, March 24th, 1988, he met a 22-year-old man named Richard outside the gay bar. It was called the Phoenix. He then again, led him to his grandma's house for $50, drug him, strangled him, and then on this occasion, he decided to perform oral sex on his corpse. So on April 23rd, he found another man drugging him with coffee while his grandmother ended up hearing something, I guess, and she said, she called out, "Is that you, Jeff?" Jeff responded in a manner so his grandma would think, he was there by himself, but she ended up finding out he wasn't alone. So he decided not to kill this person. Instead, waiting until he became unconscious before taking him to the general hospital. Then, boom, 1998 of September, his grandma got tired of his shit and wanted him to move out because his drinking habit and bringing multiple men to her house late at night. And on top of that, the foul smells from the basement and the garage. So on September 25th, Dahmer moved out into his own one-bedroom apartment at 808 North 24th Street. This is where that he finna start doing some. So 2 days later, he was arrested for drugging and sexually fondling a 13-year-old boy who he asked for nude pics. Then his father ended up hiring him a lawyer who evaluated him, later revealing he had harbored deep feelings of alienation, being an impulsive person and suspicious of others, and that dismayed his lack of accomplishments in life. So in 1987, his probation officer diagnosed him from suffering from schizoid personality disorder, which was all presented in court. So, boom. January 30th, 1989, he pled guilty to the second-degree sexual assault of enticing a child for immoral purposes, taking a 10-day work absence on Easter. But with that, he moved back into his grandma's house in Burley 2 months after his conviction and 2 months prior to his sentencing for his sexual assault. He murdered a 24-year-old aspiring model, Anthony Sears. Being his fifth victim, he lured him to his grandma's house, drug him, and strangled him. Like, how many chances is y'all gonna give, dude? Like, I'm not understanding this, because it's like, how many chances do he really need at this point? Like, y'all steady letting this man go and do what he want to do, and it's safe to say that he ain't stopping. He wasn't gonna stop. So come the next morning, he took the body to his grandma's tub, decapitating it before attempting to flay the body. Then, of course, doing that, he he did it to the other victims. So Dahmer saying that he was exceptionally attractive. He preserved his head and genitalia and acetone, stored them in a wooden box, and later placed them in his work locker. And a year later took them to his apartment he will later move in. May 23rd, 1989, he was sentenced to 5 years probation and 1 year in House of Correction, with work release permitted so he would keep a job. Also, he had to register as a sex offender. So it's like, boom, another chance to continue doing the sick shit he's doing. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the apartment that was on North 25th. So it was the 1990 killings. So May 14, 1990, he moved out his grandma's house into 924 North 25th Street, apartment 213. That was like the most, I guess it was the apartment that he did most of the bullshit in. So, taking Sears' mummified head and genitals with him, within a week of moving, he already killed his sixth victim, who was 32-year-old Raymond Smith. Promising him, of course, $50 for sex inside his apartment. He laced his drink with 7 sleeping pills, then strangled him. The following day, he went out and bought a camera and took pictures of Smith's body in position before dismembering him in the bathroom. He boiled his legs and arms and pelvis in a steel kettle with Soilex, which allowed him to rinse his bones in the sink 1 week after murdering Smith. On or about May 27, Dahmer lured yet another young man to his apartment, but this time Dahmer, dumbass, accidentally drinks the drink he had laced with sedative intended for his guest. And when he woke up the following day, he discovered that his intended victim had stolen several items of his clothes, $300, and a watch, which I feel like karma is a motherfucker. And I'm glad he got away, fam. Fuck. So, fast forward June 1990, Dahmer lured yet another person, 27-year-old Edward Smith, to his apartment, and of course doing the same thing, his same routine, but this time he placed the skeleton in the freezer hoping that it would remove the moisture. But it didn't, so he put it in the oven to dry, which made it explode, him stating he felt rotten because he wasn't able to retain the body parts. Like, bruh, you nasty. Like, oh yeah, let me put this shit in the refrigerator so it can remove the moisture. It gets weird and weird to find. Like, it don't make no sense. But anyways, not even 3 months later, he murdered 22-year-old Ernest Miller, luring him with the same $50 he agreed, and allowed him, he was asking him, like, could he listen to his heart and his stomach, attempting to give Miller oral sex. He told Dahmer it'd cost him extra. But he already gave Miller his sleeping pills, but he only had 2 of them, so he just ended up slashing his neck with the same knife he used to dissect the other victims with. He then took pictures of his body, kissed and talked to his severed head, and then wrapped his heart, biceps, and portions of his flesh from his legs in a plastic bag and placed them in a refrigerator for later consumption. Like, how do you understand it? Like, how can I make you... 3 weeks later, on September 24th, he met a 22-year-old named David Thomas at Grand Avenue Mall. He took him back to his place for a few drinks and money. Dahmer stated after giving Thomas his laced drinks, he didn't even feel attracted to him no more, but couldn't let him wake up because he feared he'd be angry for being drugged. Like, duh, who ain't gonna be mad about somebody drugging him? Like, you crazy. So, of course, he killed him and left no trace of his body, but he did take pictures of his process, and that's what aided in Thomas' identification. On a 5-month-long no-killing streak between October 1990 and February 1991, he tried on numerous occasions to lure men to his apartment, but he was unsuccessful. And I feel like maybe they was trying, word around town that somebody picking up random people for money, and they just trying to be safe. Like, that's probably just all it was, honestly, because, everybody talk, G. All right. Let's go ahead and get into them 1991 killings. So, February 1991, Dahmer lured a 17-year-old named Curtis Straughter, who was standing outside at a bus stop near Marquette University. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. But he offered him money for nude photos with added sexual intercourse. He drugged him, of course, cuffed his hand behind his back, and strangled him to retain his skull and hands and genitals, and took pictures of the dismemberment process. Like, bruh, go far, bruh. Like, I'm like, how many people are you? Like, how deep is that? I couldn't understand, but not even less than 2 months, April 7th, he persuaded Errol Lindsay to come back to his apartment, drugged him like all his other victims, but this time he went far as hell. He drilled a hole in his skull, poured hydrochloric acid into it. Dahmer says after this experience, Lindsay woke up and said, "I have a headache. What time is it?" Dahmer then drugged him again, strangled him, and saved his skull. Then flayed his body, placing the skin in cold water and salt for several weeks, hoping to permanently save it, but had to throw it out because it was too frayed and brittle. Like, bruh, how do you even have the stomach, the mind, like, to do any of that? Like, I don't even understand. But by 1991, a residents of the Oxford apartments where he was staying, they were constantly complaining that, to the property manager, Princewell was her name, of the foul smells from apartment 213, Jeffrey apartment. And they was like, shit, it sounds of falling objects and occasional chainsaws. Princewell, she did reach out to Dahmer, and he told her that the smells was from his fridge and the food is becoming spoiled. His fridge is broke, fam. Like, that, saying his tropical fish had died, but he would take care of it. Like, how do you even, like, that ain't even a good enough excuse for your next door neighbors and shit to smell it. Like, man, that shit is. So we're gonna fast forward to May 26, 1991. Dahmer met a 14-year-old teenager named Konorak. I can't even say the last name, so I'm gonna go ahead and just call him K, so I don't mispronounce his name every time. But what Dahmer didn't know that that K was the younger brother of a boy he molested in 1988. So he approached him and offered him money to post, to pose for pictures. But Kay was off top suspicious about it because, he probably didn't heard about what was going on and shit. So of course he should be suspicious. But he went ahead and went. He took a couple pictures for Dahmer before he got drugged, and then Dahmer performed oral sex on him. Like, fam, not even saying that it's cool for the older folks, but damn, you going down to like 14 years old, like. So this time, he drilled a hole and filled it with hydrochloric acid and his frontal lobe before Kay even fell unconscious. So Dahmer took him to the room where the body of the 31-year-old Tony was killed 3 days earlier, and he was still laying naked on the floor. Like, shit. Dahmer think that Kay saw the body, but he didn't react because he was already like feeling the from them pills. And after he became unconscious, Dahmer drank several beers while laying down beside him type shit before leaving his apartment to go to the bar and drink and get more alcohol. So boom. The next morning, on May 27, when Dahmer returned home, he saw that Kay was sitting on the corner of 25th, talking in loud, that's his language, with three distressed young women standing near him. So Dahmer approached him and told him it was his friend, and he tried to grab him, leading him to the apartments, but the ladies they had already called the laws. So two police officers came, and Dahmer was acting all relaxed and shit, nonchalant and shit, but he told them that Kay was his 19-year-old boyfriend, and he drank too much and was frequently crazy when he got intoxicated. Like, he probably don't even look like he even, but who knows? But still, like, but the three women, they weren't letting it go. So they tried to show the cops that he had blood around his testicles and he was bleeding from his rectum. And they saw that he was struggling to walk. But the officer told her to butt out and to shut the hell up. and not to interfere. Like, if they would have just simply listened, it could have possibly ended there, fam. Like, that's why I'm like, it was so many times where the shit could have been handled. Like, it didn't even have to continue to go and go and go, fam. Like, so after the laws arrived, 3 members of the fire department arrived too. They actually examined K for his injuries, gave him a blanket, and one of the 3 firemen believed that he did need treatment. But the officers, of course, directed them to leave. Like, I feel like when you in a line of duty, if you got some type of suspicion, like, go for it. But it was back in the day, so I don't understand it. So they ended up leaving shortly after that, and they escorted Dahmer and Kay back to Dahmer's apartment. And Dahmer asked, just having this convo, like, he appreciated the police, so trying to, I guess, convince them that he ain't no fucked up person, like, fam. So when they got into the apartment, he showed them the pictures of Kay, trying to convince them that was his boyfriend. Like, y'all gotta be slow as fuck, fam. So I guess later on they asked the cops, like, did they smell anything? But only one of the 3 say they didn't think it was nothing unusual, but later came back and stated that it was a strange scent going through the apartment, like decomposing of the body. But Dahmer, of course, told the cops that they can look around if they needed to, trying to make it seem like he ain't up to no fucking good. So the cop did go ahead and peek around, but he didn't take a good look, and they left and listed it as a domestic dispute. After Dahmer and Kay went back to the house, he injected him with acid again, but this time it was fatal. And the following day, May 28th, he took a day from work to devote himself to dismember the bodies of Kay and the 31-year-old victim he left, and he saved both of their skulls. So fast forward to June 30th, Dahmer traveled to Chicago. He met a 20-year-old male named Matt Turner at a bus station. Of course, he offered him money for a professional photo shoot, and at the apartment, Dahmer, of course, drugged, strangled him, and dismembered him, placing his head and internal organs in a separate plastic bag in the freezer. Sadly, he was never reported missing. And then, boom, 5 days later, July 4th, he met a 23-year-old named Jeremiah Weinberger. He promised him to spend a weekend with him. He drugged him and injected boiling water through his skull twice, sending him into a coma, dying 2 days later. Then, July 15th, he met a 24-year-old named Oliver Lacey. Lacey agreed to Dahmer's deal of posing for photos, and they engaged in sexual activities before he was drugged. Dahmer said he intended to spend more time with Lacey, but he was alive after unsuccessfully attempting to render Lacey's unconsciousness with chloroform. He called his job asking for the day off, yet they gave it to him, but the next day he was suspended. But after strangling Lacey, Dahmer had sex with his corpse. Corpse. Nasty motherfucker. Before dismembering him, he placed his head and his heart in the refrigerator and the skeleton in the freezer. 4 days later, after that, Dahmer ass was fired from his job. Like, he should have been fired. How many sick days you need to keep calling in? Like, that don't make no sense. But so the same day he found out he got fired, he found another 25-year-old victim named Joseph Bradhoff. Strangled him, left him lying on the bed. He covered his body with a sheet for 2 days, man. And then on July 21st, he removed the sheets to find his head covered with maggots. When he did see that shit, he decapitated the body, cleaned the head, and placed it in the refrigerator. Later, he acidified his torso along with the 2 other victims he killed last month. Like, y'all, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't even understand at this point, because how? All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into his arrest. So, July 22nd, 1991, Dahmer approached 3 men and offered them $100 for nude pics, to drink beer and simply keep him company. But only one of the 3 agreed, which was 32-year-old Tracy Edwards. Walking into an apartment, he noticed a foul odor and several boxes of hydrochloric acid on the floor. Dahmer told him he used that for cleaning bricks. Lied. So several minutes of conversating with Edward, he looked at his tropical fish and Dahmer put a handcuff on his wrist, and when he asked what happened, Dahmer unsuccessfully attempted to cuff his other wrist. Then he told him to come in the room and keep him company and pose for nude pictures, while in the bedroom, Edward noticed nude male posters on the wall and The Exorcist 3 was playing. And not only that, he saw a 57-gallon drum in the corner, which had a strong odor. Dahmer then got a knife and informed he intended to take nude pictures of him, and Edward went along with it, but in his mind, saying he will finish if Dahmer will remove the cuffs and put the knife away. Dahmer watched the movie for a second, then turned his attention back on Edwards. He laid his head on his chest and listened to his heartbeat, and with a knife pressed against him, he told him that he intended to eat his heart. Like, that shit is wild. So on numerous occasions, Dahmer tried to attack Edward, and Edward let him know, like, shit, he is friend, he ain't gonna run nowhere. But he did decide that he was either gonna jump out the window or run through the unlocked door his next opportunity. So then he had asked if he can go to the bathroom, and once he come out the bathroom, could they sit in the living room and drink a beer where it was air conditioning? Dahmer agreed, and they went in the living room, and inside the living room, he waited until Dahmer had a lapse of concentration where he wasn't paying no attention, and he asked to go to the bathroom again. When he got up from the couch, he saw that Dahmer wasn't holding his handcuffs, so he punched his ass in the face, knocking Dahmer off balance and ran out the door. Like, man, look, you already know that when shit gonna get good. So boom, come 11:30 p.m., July 22nd, he went out and flagged down two police officers at the corner. The officer had noticed that he was handcuffed, and so Edwards explained to the cops, like, shit, I was at a freak house, and he put me on handcuffs, and he had asked them if they can remove the handcuffs, but the handcuff key didn't fit. So he agreed, like, look, I'm going to go up there with y'all. And the officers, they end up going, and he told them, like, shit, he was stuck here hostage for 5 hours before he escaped. So when they arrived to the apartment, Dahmer invited them in, letting them know, indeed, he did put the handcuffs on dude, although he ain't tell him why, So that's when Edwards had let him know that he had brandished the large knife upon him, and Dahmer didn't even respond. He just let him know that the handcuff keys was on the dresser. So as he tried to go in a room and get the keys, Dahmer ass tried to pass one of the cops, but the cop was like, "Hey man, back up now, back up." So Dahmer let him in, and Edwards let him know that large knife was under the bed, and he also let him know that he had a drawer full of pictures of a whole lot of human bodies that were dismembered. And one of the cops noted that the decor that was in them pictures, it was taken in that apartment. And then the one in the living room went and showed his partner and said, "These is for real." But when Dahmer saw that one of the officers was holding one of the pictures, his ass tried to fight the cops and in an effort to resist arrest. But of course they overpowered his ass, cuffed his hands behind the back, and called a backup car. And at this point, one of the officers opened the refrigerator, revealing, y'all already know what was in there. He revealed the flesh, the severed head on the bottom of the refrigerator. Oh, shit. So Dahmer laid it on the floor and turned to the officers and said, "What I did, I should be dead." So elsewhere in the apartment, the investigators discovered 2 entire skeletons, some severed hands, 2 severed penis, and torsos in a 57-gallon drum. 3 torsos, my bad, and they was dissolving in acid. And a total of 74 pictures detailing the dismemberment of the men at the apartment at 924 North 25th Street. The chief of medical examiner later stated it was more like dismantling someone's museum than the actual crime scene. All right, now, so let's get into the confession part of it. So, in the early hours of July 23rd, 1991, Dahmer was questioned for the murders. Over the following 2 weeks, they conducted numerous interviews, combining in a total of over 60 hours. Dahmer waived his rights to have a lawyer present throughout his interrogation, saying, quote, "Created this horror, and it only makes sense. I do everything to put it out." So, he readily admitted to having murdered 16 young men in Wisconsin since 1987, with one of his victims that he killed back in Ohio in 1978. He also admitted to engaging in necrophilia with several of his victims, including performing sexual acts with their viscera. And that's like the intestines, the abdominal area. As he dismembered their bodies in a bathtub, he noted that most of the blood pooled inside his victim's chest. Then he removed the internal organs, removing the torso so the blood would drain in the tub before dicing any organs he didn't want to save. He also confessed to having consumed the hearts, livers, biceps, and portions of several victims he had with the previous year, often tenderizing the flesh and organs prior to consuming the meals with various condiments. Describing the increase that he was wanting to kill in the last 2 months prior to his arrest, stated he had been, quote, completely swapped along. It was an instant and never-ending desire to be with someone at whatever cost, someone good-looking, really nice-looking. It just filled my thoughts all day long. And when they asked him why he preserved the total of all them fucking skeletons, and Dahmer told him that he was in a process of constructing a private altar of victims, which he intended to display on the black table located in the living room. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the indictment. So, on July 25th, 1991, he was charged with 4 capital first-degree murders. By August 22nd, he had been charged with 11 murders committed in just Wisconsin, and then September 14th, investigators in Ohio have uncovered hundreds of bone fragments in the woodlands behind his family home. Dahmer, he ended up confessing to the killing of his first victim, and he was only identified by the 2 molars and a vertebra with x-ray records. Like, that shit cold, man. So, boom, 3 days later, Dahmer was charged in Ohio with Hicks murders. And he wasn't charged with attempted murder with Toomey either, because it had to be, proven beyond reasonable doubt. And since Dahmer asked, swore he didn't remember committing that murder, and there was no physical evidence of the crime existing. So, in the preliminary hearing on January 13, 1992, he pleaded guilty, but only for 15 counts of murder. Like, he was the dude was with Dahmer and ended up dead. Like, I don't care how it happened, where it happened, but it happened under your supervision, so you are accountable for that, fam. Like, it's no way around. Like, quit cutting corners. So we're going to go ahead and slide into the conviction part. So February 15th, Dahmer was ruled to be sane and not suffering from any mental disorder at the time of each of them murders, and 15 murders. And he was tried for 2. Well, when he was tried, 2 of the 12 jurors disagreed. Like, how can you even disagree with that? But Dahmer stated that he never desired freedom from his arrest and that he frankly wished for his own death. He further stressed that none of the murders had been motivated by hatred, that he understood it was nothing he could do nor say to undo the shit he did. You know what I'm saying? But the city of Milwaukee and his doctors believe that his criminal behavior has been motivated by his mental disorder. They added that the medical knowledge had given him, he added that the medical knowledge had given him a peace of mind. And although he understood like the society would never forgive him, but he hoped that God would. So him stating, I know my time in prison will be terrible, but I deserve whatever I get. Like, bruh, you just. But anyways, he say he know the time in prison will be terrible, but he deserved what he get because of what he done. And he said, he thanked the honor and he prepared for his sentence, which he know he'll be given a maximum. And he asked for no consideration. So boom, he was sentenced to life in prison and 10 plus years upon the first 2 counts, with the remaining 13 counts, carrying a mandatory life plus 70 years. And the death penalty wasn't an option for the judge to consider the penalty case because Wisconsin had abolished capital punishment in 1853. So upon his sentencing, his father and his stepmother would be allowed 10 minutes private. If y'all heard my dog, she be tripping once again. So they gave him 10 minutes private meeting with the son, with the stepmother and the father. And that was before he was transferred to Columbia Correctional Institute to begin his sentence. 3 months after his conviction in Milwaukee, Dahmer was extradited to Ohio to be tried for the murder of his first victim in a court hearing lasting 45 minutes. And Dahmer again pleaded guilty to the charges and got another life sentence. And that was on May 1st, 1992. So getting to his life in prison and his death. So his first year of incarceration, Dahmer was placed in solitary confinement due to the concerns for his physical safety. And I'm like, that's a whole lot of bullshit because he didn't give a fuck about nobody else's safety when he was out there doing all that bullshit. So he was to come in contact with his fellow inmates with Dahmer's consent. After 1 year in solitary confinement, he was transferred to a less secure unit where he was assigned a 2-hour daily work detail cleaning the toilet blocks. Shortly after his lengthy confession, Dahmer requested to be given a copy of the Bible, gradually devoting himself to Christianity and becoming a born-again Christian. Yeah, okay. So in 1994, he was baptized and graduated Oklahoma Christian University in a prison whirlpool of 1994. He ended up dropping an interview with Stone Phillips on Dateline NBC, and Dahmer stated that if a person didn't think that they were going to be accountable for what they did, then what's the point of trying to modify your behavior to keep it within acceptable range? He said that's how he thought about it anyway. So on July 3rd, 1994, Oswaldo attempted to cut Dahmer's throat with a razor blade embedded in a toothbrush as Dahmer sat in the prison chapel after the weekly church service was concluded. It was a superficial wound, and he wasn't seriously hurt in that incident. According to his family, he had been ready to die and accepted in any punishment which he might run into. So his father and his stepmother, they maintained regular contact, and his biological mother also maintained regular contact, although prior to his arrest, the two haven't even seen each other since Christmas of 1983. But his biological mother expressed her concerns for her son's physical well-being, and Dahmer responded with, "It doesn't matter, Mom. I don't care if something happens to me." So the last part of this long true crime story, we're gonna ride into his death. So on the morning of November 28, 1994, Dahmer left his cell to conduct his assigned work detail accompanied by 2 inmates named Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver. So they were left unsupervised in the showers of the prison gym for possibly 20 minutes. And at around 8:10 a.m., Dahmer was discovered on the floor of the bathroom of a gym, suffering extreme head wounds, and he had been severely bludgeoned around the head and the face with a 20-inch metal bar. He also had been repeatedly struck against the wall he sat on. And although Dahmer still was alive, he was rushed to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead 1 hour later. Anderson, which was another one of the inmates in there, he was also beaten with the same instrument, and 2 days later he died from his wounds. Scarborough who was serving a life sentence for a murder committed in 1990, informed the authorities he had attacked Dahmer with a metal bar as Dahmer was cleaning in the staff locker room. Before, he had attacked Anderson as he cleaned the other locker room. According to Scarver, Dahmer didn't make any noise while he was being attacked. And immediately after attacking both men, Scarver returned to his cell and informed the prison guards, quote, "God told me to do it. Jesse Anderson and Jeffrey Dahmer are dead." And he was adamant that he did not plan any of the attacks in advance. So that's the end of that, man. I want to know how y'all feel about that. Have y'all heard about it? Did I get y'all like as interested as I was on it? Because like I said before, like I didn't hear about that until years later. And like as soon as I did, I was like, damn, like people really do crazy shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't wish death on nobody, but I do believe that karma is a bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, so with that being said, I appreciate y'all for riding this wave with me, coming and getting a little more mind power. I'm Kiki So Hood, your host. Make sure you go follow me, rate me, give me 5 stars, and patiently wait for my next podcast. And I say patiently because I started school back Monday and life already a little hectic, but I'ma for sure continue to bring y'all a lot more knowledge, give you a little more mind power, because there's a lot of shit going on. And, you know, the little time that I do have, I make sure I research and look into some more shit that maybe everybody ain't heard about. And all my followers and shit, look, I'ma continue to bring y'all more shit. Y'all just ride this wave with me. That's all I'm saying, baby. It's Kiki So Hood, man.